On to the next segment. This might be a little bit serious, but we just mentioned Brian Daboll going to New York, and Brian Flores sued the Giants and the Dolphins, and even mentioned the Broncos in the lawsuit. And it's a lot of crazy stuff. Claims that racist hiring practices by the league have left it racially segregated and managed like a plantation. He says this: in making the decision to file the class action complaint today, I understand that I may be risking coaching the game that I love that has done so much for my family and me. My sincere hope is that by standing up against systematic racism in the NFL, others will join me to ensure that positive change is made for generations to come. I'll say this. What Brian Flores is doing right now is courageous. I think it's one of the most courageous things that I've ever seen. Risking his coaching career to stand up for what he believes in and what's right. Because truth be told, I don't believe he ever should have been fired from Miami. 24-25 record, overachieved every single season with an average quarterback. Had to throw that in there. But,
I didn't even realize because I'm so locked in. That's rude of you.
Brian Flores, he never should have gotten fired. And what he accused the Dolphins of doing, Stephen Ross saying basically in 2019, I believe it was, I'll pay you $100,000 to lose.
Every game. Each
game, I'll give you $100,000. That, I think, is probably illegal.
Because the fact that that's openly admitting that tanking exists in the NFL.
The NFL should Ross should sell the team.
He, honest to God,
he should be forced to sell.
I'll be honest, for him to say that to Flores, and not only that, but to also try and set Flores up, because also in the lawsuit it says that he tried to get Flores to tamper with the quarterback by inviting him onto his yacht. And when Brian Flores got onto Stephen Ross's yacht, Stephen Ross was like, the quarterback that I want you to tamper with to come to Miami is going to be here. Brian Flores left. He didn't get involved in that.
And the quarterback wasn't named?
Wasn't named. And it's very smart of Flores to do that, because I feel like that was probably a setup to get Flores fired. And because Stephen Ross didn't have a yes man, now Brian Flores is made out as a scapegoat. He's fired. He couldn't forge these relationships. But the locker room in Miami, they were shattered when he was fired. I mean, say what you want about him not developing Tua or the offense being, inconsistent. He overachieved there. With the Giants, saying that he had a sham interview, basically, and
the Broncos was the sham interview.
Also, the Giants.
Oh,
yeah, he went out. He went out to dinner with Joe Shane after Brian Daboll was already announced. Well, they were already
the
set
inner
on
workings. They believed that Daboll was going to get the job.
Yeah, they already had picked Daboll to get the job, and they had dinner.
I keep saying Daboll.
They had dinner with Flores anyway. I will say the reason I'm skeptical about that story in particular is because the Giants interviewed Leslie Frazier twice, Buffalo Bills defensive coordinator. He was a part of the Rooney Rule too. So am I necessarily going to believe that, okay, Brian Flores is like, did the Giants just interview him to fulfill the rule? Well, how is that possible if Leslie Frazier got interviewed? John Mara personally called Brian Flores and was, talking to him to potentially be their next head coach. So I'm not too sure about the Giants one, but if it is true, this is some crazy stuff. The Giants PR department came out with some statements retracting basically what happened. The Broncos PR department came out and basically said that we're not going to be challenged on our integrity of the organization. Brian Flores also mentioned a sham interview with the Broncos where, your executives came in drunk and they really didn't take it seriously. The Rooney Rule is supposed to be in place so minority head coaches get a fair shake in getting head coaching opportunities, but it's really been anything but that, and it's been used as a way to, okay, we're just going to interview this black coach just to get it out the way, and then we'll go find our real candidates. Because the fact that guys like Eric Bieniemy, Jim Caldwell are not head coaches, I think is just ridiculous, because they deserve a job. In this cycle, they deserve the job. But here's where statistics come into play. There are 32 owners in the NFL. They are all white, at least the majority owners. And Brian Flores compared the slave thing to the plantation thing because all the owners are white. The NFL is made up of 70% black players. They're profiting off their labor. And basically you got these rich executives just sitting on top, having a dandy time. And I mean, these guys basically putting their lives on the line. I mean, they get CTE, and for a very long time, the NFL withheld information about CTE, so it didn't get out. And that's putting the players in harm's way. I love the game of football, but there is no doubt in my mind that football is modern day gladiators. That's what it is. Back in the old times in Rome, they had gladiators fight to the death out there. Football is basically a violent sport as well. I mean, it's very violent, and I understand it. I still love the sport, but I can understand the truth about that. There's one black head coach in the NFL that makes up 3%. There are 4 black OCs that makes up 12%. There are 11 black DCs, defense coordinators, that makes up 34%. There are 8 special teams coordinators that makes up 25%, 3 quarterback coaches, 9%, and 6 NFL GMs, 19%. 6 black NFL GMs. The black population in the United States is 14%. Black coaches make up 27% of the positions Flores stated in the lawsuit. So while the percentage isn't the 70% of players, it doesn't equate to that. And I understand that what people are talking about is, well, the coaches should represent the players and, with their races and stuff like that. But, I mean, there's just so many more white people in this country than there are minorities, like 44%. 27% of these position coaches are black. There are 14% black people in the United States in the population. Out of 724 billionaires, only 7 are black. That's 0.009%. When you look at the numbers like that, it doesn't sound like it's that big of a discrepancy. Even though I do think we have ways to go, I don't think we're at the finish line yet. I do think saying that, wow, because there's no black owners, then, this is definitely racist or something like that. The reason I don't agree with that is because, I mean, to be an owner, you have to be a billionaire.
Multi-billionaire.
And there's only 7 black billionaires in the United States. That doesn't even make up 1% of billionaires. So the numbers actually look quite clear. Okay, there are no black owners because really they're not even 1% of billionaires are black. Then we get into ownership groups, but there are owners that are women. There's the majority owner for the Bills. She's an Asian woman. There are 7 women that are owners. Shad Khan with the Jaguars is an owner. He's Indian. He's not white. So, I mean, there are minorities that represent this group. So I don't think just because there's no black people that are owners, it's all totally racist. I do think that we have ways to go in terms of getting coaches fair shakes, minority coaches fair shakes, and getting a job. And even though the stats say there's only one black head coach, Mike Tomlin, we have Robert Saleh, Lebanon descent. He's not white. He's a coach. He's a minority coach. You also have Ron Rivera. He's Mexican. He's a minority coach. There are 3 minority coaches in the NFL. There needs to be more, and I think there are more deserving candidates, but let's not act like it's just a black and white thing. Like it's not. There's a lot of gray area in this, and there's a lot of statistics that kind of back up the numbers of why the NFL is shaped this way. And I think we have to, definitely there's room for change, but we also can't just walk into this blind and feel like everything is problematic. That's how I feel.
This is very, very hard for me because my team's involved, and I love the Broncos. You guys watch our Zooms. See, my room is Broncoed out. Got Broncos sheets. My walls are orange. Have Bronco memorabilia. And this is the second time now that my team has been in some type of controversy revolving around racism or some type of racist activity. The first time Colin Kaepernick, we're interested prior to the 2016 season. We want to trade for him. Colin Kaepernick doesn't want to take a pay cut. He doesn't end up playing with us. He plays relatively well that 2016 season. Now, San Fran said that they were going to cut him regardless, whether he opted in or out. Regardless of that fact, they were going to cut him. But that was during that season that he started his kneeling protest. And even with all that going on, he still played great football. He didn't allow the outside noise of people constantly screaming and yelling at him to stand for the anthem. He stuck to his beliefs. He played solid football. He did his job. He kept both of those separate from one another. Where he was a football player, he was also a social activist. Now all that goes on. Broncos suddenly aren't interested in him in the offseason. We decided to draft Paxton Lynch. We decided to bring in Case Keenum. We decided to bring in Joe Flacco. We don't give someone like a Colin Kaepernick, who has shown the ability to go to a Super Bowl, go to an NFC Championship game, showed in his last season in San Francisco that he's more than capable of being a starting quarterback. John Elway goes and says that we gave him a chance. He didn't want to be with us. It's a cop-out way of essentially saying, we don't want the burden of bringing this guy who has become such a globally accepted, globally, just looked at globally more than what he is on the football field for what he did on the sideline of the football field. Because it was affecting the money in these owners' pockets. They wouldn't let Colin Kaepernick suit up again. Now here we are again, 2019. We're interviewing Brian Flores for a job, and the guys are supposedly, according to Brian Flores, this is all alleged again, so I don't want to jump to conclusions. However, one time is already bad enough. Now 2 times is getting inexcusable. Shows up to the meeting an hour late, accusing the people in the meeting to be drunk, not taking the interview seriously. And Vic Fangio ends up getting hired. Now, in this situation, Vic Fangio is a great coach, but he is a white coach. Then these text messages between Bill Belichick and Brian Flores get released, and it's Bill Belichick. Who knows if these are texts that are in a lawsuit? I'm assuming they're real. It's a screenshot. It's 2022. Technology is different nowadays. The wording from Bill Belichick, the way that he texts is interesting, which is, it's almost like you or I are texting with the question marks, the exclamation points.
They're real.
And it's Bill Belichick texting Brian Flores accidentally, thinking that it's Dabble. Correct? I'm pronouncing his name correct. Dable. Saying, congratulations. Word around is you're getting this gig. And Flores is, have you heard something that I haven't heard? I'm supposed to be interviewing with them on Thursday. This is 3 days before his interview. He's finding out that they already are going to hire this coach, but they need to look at this guy. So why bring in Flores? I understand you mentioned that they already had interviewed someone, but why bring in Flores for an interview if you already know that this is going to be your guy? It's tough for me to sit here as a Bronco fan, to sit here as someone who loves the game of football and see history again where Brian Flores saw what happened with Colin Kaepernick. Kaepernick took a stand. It cost him his NFL career. He knew what was on the line when he decided to take a knee. And I'm 100% with Colin Kaepernick. Everything he did. Colin Kaepernick's a hero to me. He decided to take that knee and put social injustice, police brutality first. But he understood what risk stood with that. Now here we are again, Brian Flores. Similar situation. Before we heard any of this, was a top head candidate coach for a plethora of teams. We're shocked to hear him go. And at first, the rumors of what I heard is that it's tough for them. It's tough in Miami, in the organization of Miami, that he's tough, that the organization is, the players are not happy to be with him, that he's a strong personality. It's his way or the highway. And so here I'm with Tua. Tua's my guy. I want the best situation for Tua. It seemed as if there was some turmoil. And it comes out all these news and all these different reports of everything that's going on within Miami's organization. And how can't you stand with Brian Flores? His career is on the line now. He might never get another coaching opportunity again. You take a stand like this, you're putting a lot at risk. NFL's already came out and said that these aren't true, that we're strongly going to fight against it. Broncos have come out and said this isn't true. But what can you expect from these guys? Of course they're not going to come out and say, yes, of course we did that, we apologize. They want to go through the trial. They wanted to see what's going on. They really want to see how far they could push it. We saw how it went with Kaepernick. The NFL had to issue an apology. They reached an agreement with money-wise. It was a fact they had blackballed Kaepernick. For me personally, it's hard to see why this man would put so much on the line, especially knowing the climate that we're in, where African American and black males and black females as well deal with as much as they do on a day-to-day basis. It's tough for me to sit here and say, I think he's just saying this because they're not giving him a fair shot. Or he's just saying this because he's not getting a head coaching job and he's upset about it. It is really hard. I'm getting a little emotional because it means a lot to me. I'm a Broncos fan. Now this is number two. This is strike number 2. Strike 1 was bad enough, especially with how much I love and appreciate and admire Colin Kaepernick. If it comes out and this is true, I promise, I can't root for the Broncos. I can't do it. It's truly sickening to me, and I pray that this gets sorted out correctly. I pray that everything happens, and I don't want it to, if it's not true, I don't want it to pray that it's not true, because I don't want Brian Flores to come out wrong. But I want it to be resolved properly, because I want to know the facts, and I want to act accordingly. Because something needs to be done. And you read off the statistics, and it makes it seem on the big picture of there's not black owners, there's not African American owners, there's not that many minority owners, because the populations are different. However, it's tough for me in scenarios like this, where players and coaches who are getting paid for this, who are doing a job for these people that have such high power, especially in a country where we view minorities differently than a certain population, it's hard for me to feel as if he would just come out and ruin his life or put his financial situation at such risk, knowing the position that he's in.
It's beautifully said. To piggyback off that point, there's definitely a race problem in America, but in my opinion, it's much more about classism. It's about wealthy versus poverty.
Fair enough.
And I think that's what society has always been. We have scenarios where gruesome stuff does happen, and it is unjust. But at least in this current climate in America, while there still are race issues, I feel like it's much more classism that decides power structures. And the NFL right now has a power structure. Race plays into part just because of the history of the country. But I think classism is at the top of it, and it is basically the wealthy versus people that don't have wealth, and the 1%ers. And
Joel, I know you want to say something, but it's the first day of Black History Month, right? We want to celebrate all the history that the African Americans, that black Americans in our country have done to get to this point in society. And we have today 12 bomb threats on HBCUs today, right? We have this news that Brian Flores now has been, to a degree, put in a scenario where he's not getting head coaching looks, and they're just using him to fill a quota for the Rooney Rule. when are we going to actually start to celebrate these people and not the African American, the black community, and not put them in situations where they have to be afraid? 12 bomb threats is disgusting, where you have to shut down class. These kids have to fear for their lives because we live in a society where they're not fully accepted. I can't sit with that.
Yeah, listen, you guys both spoke really well on it. And Joel, I think you touched on it earlier. It starts at the top, right? We have 32, or not everyone's white, but majority of these owners are white. And I don't want to generalize everybody, but older white men don't have the best track record of giving minorities, chances, especially when you're filthy rich like that and you have all the money and you think you have all the power. I think it's obvious that the Rooney Rule hasn't worked to what the NFL thought, right? The NFL thought they would put this rule in place and it would give minorities and black coaches and executives a chance to have these positions of power. And although a lot of players, and like you mentioned, 70% of them are black, a lot of them after their playing career want to go into coaching. And, there's been some success stories like Mike Tomlin. And, we've seen in the past with guys like Todd Bowles, who's gotten head coaching positions, and Ron Rivera, but they are few and far between, right? For the most part, even look at this head coaching cycle. You have Jim Harbaugh rumored to be in Minnesota, McDaniels go to the Raiders, Dable go to the Giants. You have all of these white coaches, and we look at a guy like Eric Bieniemy, who's, we've beaten this to a dead horse at this point, right? It's year after year after year. Why isn't he getting a head coach? And you don't want to sit here and think it's because he's black, right? That's not the first thing you want to come to your mind. But when you look at what he's done for the Chiefs and year after year, and a lot of this stuff we talk about in here is sports, right? And it's at the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that important. But stuff like this, when you're impacting people's livelihoods and impacting their families, and you bring everything into it, is a lot more important. So I do think it starts at the top in ownership and bringing in possibly more ownership groups. And we mentioned a team like Miami as someone that I would definitely go out and force them to sell. There's no reason there's a line of people who are going to be signing up to buy an NFL team. And Stephen Ross should be forced to sell. There's no reason why you should be purposely losing games that impacts the integrity now and the team of the NFL in general. And I hope it's not true. And it's hard to go through all of this because it is a lawsuit. A lot of it is he say, she say. A lot of it is the people in the room know what happened. Not everyone else did. And now none of us are lawyers, so I'm not going to say I read through it. I understood most of it. But there's going to be a lot, and it's going to go over year after year. And the sad part about it is it's the NFL. They have the most money and basically any organization in the world. And at the end of the day, Brian Flores is probably going to have to settle because the NFL is just going to go at him. And we saw the same thing with Kaepernick, who eventually, I believe, he settled. Am I incorrect? Right? They settled, where you just have these huge organizations and structured that have all the power, all the money, all the lawyers. And you have Brian Flores, who one of the most courageous thing you could do, you're putting your family on the line, your livelihood. This is what you've done your entire life. And you're going up against such this big organization, almost too big to fail, that it's going to be hard to really get down and get to the facts, because there's no excuse if you are a Broncos team, and whether it's true or not, to not even show him the respect. This isn't even black and white. This is a respect thing, right? You have a guy who wants to come in here and really fulfill his dream of being a head coach. It's something he's been thinking of, I'm sure, when he was a player, or even when he was an assistant coach, coordinator, whatever. This is his dream, and you can't even come in and give him the time of day to even respect him. The Giants thing is also something I am skeptical on because of the Leslie Frazier, and as well as the Giants are allowed to have a favorite. If the Giants like Dable, I don't think there's anything wrong with them liking Dable, but still want to bring in Brian Flores. Just be like, you know what, this is a guy who has credibility. It sounds like they gave him a fair shot, that they interviewed him for multiple hours. Like you mentioned, the owner came out and talked to him as well. So I'm not sure how much we could really buy into the Giants stuff, but it's really a reflection of our country, who's been struggling with this for years. And it's sad that we're at the best place we've ever been in. And it just kind of goes back to, like, we're not that far away from the 60s and the 50s with MLK and segregation and everything that's been going on. Like, that was one lifetime ago. Like, my parents were going through that, right? My dad lived through that. So it's something that not only the NFL has to deal with, but we're still dealing with as a country. And, we've had presidents in the past and in the present that haven't done the most for the minority and African-American community. And that's a reflection of the NFL, who have tried. And just like the USA could say they've tried, it hasn't executed, right? It hasn't gone to plan exactly. I don't know what the next steps are for the NFL, because the Rooney Rule isn't working. They're giving these people a chance, but at the end of the day, when you have these extremely rich, older white owners, they're probably more often than not going to end up going with white coaches or white general managers. Now, we have seen a couple in the past, like Eric Berry and Minnesota's general manager as well, who are minorities. So we are seeing at least a little bit of progress there, but we read the stats. It's disproportionate to the amount of NFL players and NFL coaches as well who come into, who have the ability to get these roles. Because you do mention the population is 14% black, but I mean, look at how those 14%, what percentage are qualified to be an executive or a coach, right? That's under 1% most likely. On the other hand, you look at the NFL players and executives, it's 70%. So a lot more opportunity there. So I do think while it is an NFL problem, it just goes back to U.S. problem, right? It's something that other countries look at us and we think we're the best country in the world. And if you think that, I can't say we're not. I mean, we have a bunch of freedoms and things that other countries don't, but we do lack some of these just very basic and common sense things that we've been struggling with, ever since we become a country.
You mentioned the point about Mike Tomlin, and it's an excellent point, because Mike Tomlin is the only current black NFL coach currently in the NFL. And he has had to be damn near perfect to not get fired.
Could not agree more.
He's never had a losing record in his career. Despite Big Ben being washed this past season, Mike Tomlin still managed to pull out a winning record. And every so often, we hear an idea floated out there. Oh, should the Steelers move on from Mike Tomlin? Should they move on? It just goes to show you that you can be as perfect as Mike Tomlin and still not be good enough.